The Egyptian civilization was one of the most important civilizations that developed in the Fertile Crescent region, installed in the extreme northeast of Africa, in a region characterized by the existence of deserts and the vast plain of the Nile River. My name is Francisca, and welcome to the Myths and Curiosities channel. Already leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any notifications. The Egyptian civilization was formed from the mixture of several peoples, among them, the Hamites, the Semites, and the Nubians, who appeared in the Paleolithic period. The first population centers only began to form during the Neolithic period, when communities began to dedicate themselves more to agriculture than hunting or fishing. Around 400 BC, the ancient nuclei gave way to small political units, the nomos, ruled by nomarchs, which merged into two kingdoms, one from Lower Egypt to the north and another from Upper Egypt to the south. Around 3200 BC, Menes, the ruler of the Upper Nile, unified the two kingdoms and became the first pharaoh, giving rise to the dynastic period, which can be divided into three distinct moments: Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, and New Kingdom. Old Kingdom, 3200 to 2300 BC, time when the unification of Egypt was completed. The Egyptian capital became Tinis and later transferred to Memphis, in the Cairo region, current capital of Egypt. The pharaoh, considered a deity, ruled with absolute power. Between 2700 and 2600 BC, the pyramids of Giza were built, attributed to the pharaohs Khepes, Khephren, and Menkaure. In the Old Kingdom, there were several expeditions for mineral exploration in the mines of Sinai and Red Sea, as well as military campaigns against Nubians and Libyans. At the same time, trade with the Near East, Lebanon, Palestine, Mesopotamia, and Punt intensified and, together with military successes, enabled Egypt to found strategic camps in a maritime fleet, as well as to acquire gold, copper, turquoise, timber of cedar, myrrh, malachite, and electrum. During the Old Kingdom, a highly developed central administration made it possible to increase agricultural productivity, which would serve as an engine for impressive advances in the fields of architecture, art, and technology. Along with the growing importance of central administration, a new class of scribes and literate officials emerged who received property from the pharaoh as payment for their services. The pharaohs also made land concessions for their funeral cults and local temples to ensure that these institutions would have the necessary resources to worship the pharaoh after his death. First Intermediate Period, 2160 to 2055 BC. After the collapse of Egypt's central government at the end of the Old Kingdom, the government was unable to sustain or stabilize the country's economy. Regional governors could not count on the pharaoh for support in times of crisis, and the resulting shortage of goods and political disputes escalated into famines and small-scale civil wars. However, despite the problems, local leaders who no longer owed tribute to the pharaoh used this independence to establish a thriving culture in the provinces. Once they dominated their own resources, the provinces developed economically, a fact demonstrated by the biggest and best funerals among all social classes. There were bursts of creativity, as artisans in the provinces adopted and adapted cultural motifs previously restricted to Old Kingdom royalty, and scribes developed literary styles that expressed the optimism and originality of the period. Freed from allegiance to the pharaoh, local rulers began to compete with each other for territorial control and political power. By 2160 BC, the rulers of Heracleopolis controlled Lower Egypt, while a rival clan based in Thebes, the Intef family, took possession of Upper Egypt. As the Intefs grew in power and expanded northward, a clash between the two rival dynasties became inevitable. Around 2055 BC, Theban forces under Mentuhotep II finally defeated the rulers of Heracleopolis, reuniting the two lands and ushering in a period of economic and cultural renaissance known as the Middle Kingdom. Middle Kingdom, 2000 to 1580 BC. At this stage, the pharaohs regained power that had been weakened by the action of the nomarchs. In conquered Palestine, a copper mine was found, and in Nubia, a gold mine. The pharaohs of the Middle Kingdom restored the country to prosperity and stability, a situation that spurred a renaissance of art, literature, and monumental building projects. In the Middle Kingdom, as a way of guaranteeing the succession, the pharaohs still alive shared the throne with their successors, keeping them as co-pharaohs. The last great ruler of the Middle Kingdom, Amenemhat III, allowed Asian settlers to settle in the Delta region in order to have sufficient labor available for his particularly active construction and mining campaigns. These ambitious campaigns, however, in conjunction with inadequate flooding of the Nile in his reign, weakened the economy and precipitated a slow decline in the Second Intermediate Period during the later 13th and 14th dynasties. During this decline, Asian settlers began to take control of the Delta region, eventually achieving power in Egypt, as was the case with the Hyksos. Between 1800 and 1700 BC, the Hebrews retreating from Palestine arrived in Egypt. The Hyksos, a nomadic people of Asian origin, invaded the country, remaining in the region until 1580 BC. Second Intermediate Period, 1650 to 1550 BC. Around 1785 BC, with the power of the Middle Kingdom pharaohs weakened, Asian immigrants residing in the city of Avaris took control of the region and forced the central government to withdraw to Thebes, where the pharaoh was treated as a vassal and was obliged to pay tribute. The Hyksos, Hyksos, foreign rulers, imitated the Egyptian government model and presented themselves as pharaohs, integrating Egyptian elements into their Middle Bronze Age culture. They also introduced new elements such as the horse, the war chariots, new spinning and weaving methods, and new musical instruments. New Empire, 1580 to 525 BC, was marked by the expulsion of the Hyksos, by the great military development and by the conquest of a vast territory. The Hebrews were enslaved, and around 1250 BC and under the leadership of Moses, the Hebrews managed to flee Egypt, in what became known as the Exodus and is recorded in the Old Testament of the Bible. The New Kingdom pharaohs established a period of unprecedented prosperity by securing borders and strengthening diplomatic ties with their neighbors. Military campaigns carried out under Thutmose I and his grandson Thutmose III extended the pharaoh's influence into the greatest empire Egypt had ever seen. When Thutmose died in 1425 BC, Egypt stretched from Nia in northern Syria to the fourth cataract of the Nile in Nubia, cementing allegiance and clearing the way for essential imports like bronze and timber. The pharaohs of the New Kingdom began a large-scale building campaign to promote the god Amun, with worship based in Karnak. They also built monuments to glorify their own achievements, both real and imagined. Pharaoh Hatshepsut used such means as propaganda to legitimize her claim to the throne. Her successful reign was marked by trade expeditions to Punti, an elegant mortuary temple, a pair of colossal obelisks, and a chapel at Karnak. Despite his accomplishments, Hatshepsut's nephew and stepson Thutmose III attempted to have his legacy disappear near the end of his reign, possibly in reprisal for the usurpation of his throne. The height of Egyptian civilization was reached during the long rule of Pharaoh Ramses II, 1292 to 1225 BC, who defeated several Asian peoples. Egypt's wealth made it a tempting target for an invasion, especially of Libyans and the so-called Sea Peoples. In the reign of Merneptah, both peoples allied with the objective of attacking Egypt, also inciting the Nubians to revolt. With the subsequent defeat of the invaders, the rebels would eventually be supplanted. During the reign of Ramses III, the pharaoh managed to drive the Sea Peoples out of Egypt in two major battles. However, they would eventually settle on the Palestinian coast, and during the reign of his successors, they would completely take over the region. Third Intermediate Period, 1069 to 664 BC. After his reign, the struggles between the priests and the pharaohs weakened the state, which stimulated new invasions. In 525 BC, the Persians, commanded by Cambyses, defeated the Egyptians at the Battle of Palusa and definitively conquered the region. All these phases were marked by specific personalities and unique events, such as the captivity of the Hebrews. Then there was the Hellenistic period, marked by the expansion and dominance of Greek civilization commanded by Alexander the Great. From then on, Egypt would not be independent for at least 2,500 years, during which time it would successively become a province of the Persians, territory occupied by Macedonians, Romans, Arabs, Turks, and finally English. The constant invasions exerted great influence on Egyptian culture, especially the Macedonian domain that allowed the penetration of Greek ideas. This dominion established a dynasty of Macedonian origin, called Ptolemaic or Lagid, to which Cleopatra belonged. Her son by the Roman Emperor Julius Caesar was the last Ptolemaic king. Then the region fell under Roman and later Arab rule. In this period, Christian and Muslim cultural elements were successively introduced. Religion in Egyptian civilization. Egyptian society was marked by a deep religiosity. Polytheists, they worshipped several gods: Amun-Ra, protector of the pharaohs; Ta, protector of artisans; Thoth, god of science and protector of scribes; Ambes, protector of embalming; Maat, goddess of justice, among others. They believed in life after death and in the return of the soul to the body, worshipped the dead, and developed mummification techniques to preserve bodies. Science in Egyptian civilization. The Egyptians developed the study of mathematics and geometry, mainly focused on civil construction. They used square root and fractions. They also calculated the area of the circle and the trapezoid. The concern with the floods and ebbs of the Nile stimulated the development of astronomy. Observing the stars, they located planets and constellations. The day was divided into 24 hours. The week had 10 days and the month had 3 weeks. The year of 365 days was divided into agrarian seasons: fall, winter, and summer. The development of the practice of mummification allowed for greater knowledge of human anatomy, making it possible to perform surgeries on the skull. They treated diseases of the stomach, heart, and fractures. Writing developed in 3 ways: hieroglyphic, the sacred writing of tombs and temples, the oldest, before 3000 BC, consisting of more than 600 characters; hieratic, a simplification of hieroglyphics. Its use was linked to religion and power. Demotics was the popular script, formed by about 350 signs, used in contracts drawn up by scribes. The culture and monuments of ancient Egypt have left a lasting cultural legacy for the world. Its art and architecture have been widely copied, and its antiquities taken to various corners of the world. Its monumental ruins have inspired the imagination of travelers and writers for centuries. Tell me here in the comments what you think, and if you haven't subscribed yet, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. See you in the next video.